This is The Professionals, a podcast by music business technology and broadcast media technology students on Outcast OCCR Owens Community College Radio. In this series, students will interview industry professionals in their respective fields to help gather an idea of what it's like to work in their industry.
This is the Industry Professionals Podcast. I'm Aaron Adams, and I'm joined here with Kyle Lenahan. My first question for you is, what company do you work for?
I am a math teacher at Springfield High School. So I also work as a part-time color analyst for basketball on BCSN.
When did you start working for said company?
I stopped coaching after last year, so the 2023-24 basketball season. So I started with BCSN. I've done it just for 1 year, probably did 12 to 15 games, just again in a color analyst role for both boys, and I did one girls basketball game. So I've done it for 1 year.
What was the process of you getting hired?
It was, I stopped coaching, and I had kind of talked with Justin Feldkamp, who runs BCSN. I know him from, we live in the same neighborhood, and we see each other all the time at various youth baseball games and sporting events and stuff. So I had kind of talked about it with him a little bit and said I would have some interest if I stopped coaching. And he had me send in a reference letter and, a resume and things like that. I was just kind of on the fence about it. And then I actually attended a Springfield volleyball game in the fall and saw Mason Lowry just by happenstance. And he's like, "Hey, are you going to help us out this winter?" So I kind of made it a little bit more official and had an interview with Feldkamp, and the rest is history.
And why did you want this job, and do you have any prior experience that might have helped you with your current occupation?
In terms of experience, I'm the public address announcer at Springfield football games. That's really the only time I've ever had, like a mic. I do the pep rallies and things like that. But as far as experience, no. Why I wanted to is just kind of, I knew I was going to miss coaching a little bit. I got out of it because I got 2 young kids at home, and it was just time to be home with them a little bit more. But I knew there was going to be, I wanted to stay connected to the game a little bit. And a way to do that, you could think about officiating. I wanted no part of officiating. That's way too tough for me. But, this again allowed me to kind of stay connected with the game. I could still watch a little bit of film, still kind of share my thoughts, scratch the itch a little bit without the time commitment.
If those weren't your jobs, what do you think what job you would have?
Well, I'm math teaching at Springfield High School. So, I hope I get invited back to BCSN. If they ask me back for next year, I would do it again. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it was the right amount of basketball for me and the right amount of time commitment. But, I've been teaching now for 18 years. So that's pretty much what I'm going to be doing the rest of my life.
What equipment and materials did you need to be prepared for a typical work day at BCSN?
Well, I just show up and they have all the equipment ready for me. Basically a headset. You've got the monitor in front of you, things like that. Now, I always tried to show up with at least 1 or 2 games of kind of prep film prepared with my notes, a little bit of scouting report. I'd always have the roster so I could keep track of score, fouls, things like that. So it was a little bit of prep work just, on some papers and everything. But once you do it for a game or 2, you get used to the fact that the people aren't watching the same thing you're watching. They're watching the screen. So you have to tell them what's going on on the screen, So that was the biggest thing, that the biggest piece of equipment that I had to adjust to was making sure I talked people through what's on the screen and not what I'm seeing in the actual gym.
From start to finish, what would a typical work day look like as soon as you show up?
As soon as I get there, they had to show up an hour before game time. So we would get there, go down and talk to the coaches, just confirm starting lineups, just kind of talk to them a little bit about, we always emailed them earlier on in the week just for probable starters, what are your keys to the game, just thoughts on the matchup coming up and any background information they wanted us to share. So you'd go down and you talk to the coaches, just again, confirm starting lineups, talk to them about those keys and everything, see if there's anything's changed, anybody got hurt in practice or is sick now or anything like that, just to kind of make sure that tie up any loose ends. Once you talk to them, then you basically sit down, put the headphones on, do your sound checks, make sure everybody's good to go, make sure, you can hear each other, you can hear the producers, and then you're pretty much rolling.
What are some challenges that you faced while working?
I think the first one was, the very first game I did, in the first 90 seconds of the game, there was a fight on the court between the 2 teams. So as they're kind of showing replays of the situation, it hadn't clicked in my head yet what I referred to before with talking about what's on the screen. So I was talking through what's going on in the gym with, the officials are meeting right now. When out of the corner of my eye, I catch, on the screen, they're showing replays of it. So again, nobody cares that the officials are huddled up right now. They kind of want to talk about what's happening on the screen. So that was, I'd say, the biggest challenge. And also it's getting used to the back and forth between the play-by-play guy and me. If you have a point to make, you can't take too long on it because then the next play's happening. Basketball, as you know, is a back and forth game. You got to make sure you get your point out quick. So it was just kind of adjusting to, and I still don't think I was great at it by the end of the year, but kind of getting into the flow of the game and making sure you give the play-by-play guy a chance to obviously tell everybody what's happening in the game while still adding your 2 cents throughout the matchup.
What are some tips that you would give to anyone who wants to do what you do?
I just be as prepared as possible. I kind of treated it like I was going into the game as a coach. What did I see as the matchup? It's never a bad idea to over prepare. I always had way too much information. After the first 3 or 4 games, you kind of realize what information you can actually get out and what information is just not really necessary. Now, I still wrote those things down just in case. You never know when there's dead time. A kid unfortunately gets hurt or something. You just never know. Somebody spills Gatorade on the floor. They got to clean it up. You just don't know what you're going to have to talk about. But just be over prepared for the game and then kind of see what happens throughout it.
What has been your favorite experience since starting?
That first game, I went through, everything in that one game. Like I said, there was the fight. There were 4 or 5 guys who got ejected during that game. The one team had to finish with 4 guys. It was a wild one. So, that one's definitely the most memorable because it was my first one. Going down to Elida Fieldhouse, I got to cover the regional semifinals with St. Francis when they played Loveland out of Cincinnati. That was a cool experience. It's just, an historic gym. I remember being there. Our volleyball team in high school made the regionals and they played there. So, it had been 20 plus years since I had been there. So a lot of memorable experiences for that first year.
Is there anything that might turn people away from their area that you work in?
I think it's just getting used to, you're talking on camera, and some people, I'm a teacher, so it's just kind of comes naturally to me. I wasn't nervous at all. You're talking about basketball, and you're talking in front of people. The biggest thing I think is getting used to the end of the game, the 2-man is what it's called, where you're in front of the camera and you kind of go back and forth, just kind of as a wrap up. That was really the only part that made me nervous. During the game, there were no issues whatsoever. But a lot of times the play-by-play guy liked the analyst to interview the player of the game. And I wasn't, again, not really comfortable, wasn't great at that. I got better throughout the season. And sometimes the play-by-play guy would just handle it for me, which was fantastic. But I would just say it's the one thing that would keep people away is just nerves and access to it. I was fortunate that I knew Justin Feldkamp. Not everybody, knows those kind of people. So I think it's access, and it's just the fact of getting over that you're talking on camera in front of, you don't know how many people, but hopefully lots.
What activities would you recommend to young people that want to do what you do?
Watch as much basketball as possible. And even, if you're home by yourself and nobody's going to make fun of you, just kind of talk through the game. How would you explain what happened? What actions are you seeing? Press pause and kind of talk through what happened on that play. Press play again and see if the actual guy who's the professional, see if he kind of says the same thing. But it's watching as much basketball as possible, getting online and reading stories either after the game or reading, Zach Lowe and those kind of writers, Bill Simmons, those kind of guys, listening to podcasts, just kind of getting the overall what's happening in games, in the game of basketball, so you can kind of just talk and relate a high school basketball game to the overall game of basketball.
And then along the lines with that, who did you look up to or really watch before starting this job?
I don't know. There's, I really like Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy. Those guys, they do a really, really good job on games and not only talking about basketball, but making it fun. And I wanted to try to emulate that.
Thank you, Coach Linehan.
No problem.
This has been the Industry Professionals Podcast.
This has been the Professionals Podcast by Music Business Technology and Broadcast Media Technology students. Join us next time on Outcast OCCR Owens Community College Radio.